Or Trina.
Trina. Nice to meet you.
AKA.
I was looking because I didn't see it over there. They're
Yeah.
fabulous.
I was.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
Good to see you. Beautiful show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Do you know Chris Kuffner and Kim? Did I say that right? Yeah, from right. And you're a painter. Yes. And? Yeah.
How long have you been painting?
I guess it depends on what kind of painting. I've been playing around with paints, I guess, for 15 years. And the ink I started maybe 5-6 years ago.
Nice, really nice. Oh, really? I didn't. This is like weird.
It's very weird. It's really, really weird. But it's also like, well, this is what
Yeah, I guess, or have you? It's kind of for
just
you,
leave it in my
but
apartment.
I mean, do you have that in mind when you paint? Like, oh, people are going to see this, or it's just your personal
Not at
thing,
all. When they
right?
asked me about this show, I was like, oh yeah, show.
Yeah.
Why didn't I think of that?
Well, it's wonderful that people are getting to see it.
I'm so happy. I'm really happy.
I'm glad it's not too freaky, or like we're revealing in a too vulnerable or anything.
I want it to. I want it to.
It's not too late, you know. Right as young, you can like cry if you want to. It's your party.
I like the questions. Because I actually don't know.
Uh-huh.
I'm happy to answer anything someone has to ask.
I thought this was a great opportunity for Trina to share these beautiful paintings that she does, that she's been doing up in her little garret with everyone. And so I was blown away by how it turned out. I think it's a very professional show, and I think you have great things ahead of you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bravo.
So I don't
Coming,
know,
everybody. Thank you.
I don't know where to start. All of these paintings have been done since you've been in Fairfield.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
So this is about, what, 8 years?
8 years, yeah.
I love these two because I love Japanese ink painting, and this refers to that. Tell everyone a little bit about how these are made.
Okay, well, these are made with Black India ink. What I do is I usually pour down a layer of water and I put it in, I guess, a general shape that I want the ink to flow. And then I add the ink to the water and I take the canvas and I pick it up both sides and I tilt it back and forth so that I get a very smooth line and I get the ink to mix with the water. And doing that, it creates different, kinds of textures. So you have really smooth ones that happen, they're very flat, and then you have more rough ones like this that form. And then you also have outlines that happen when you put down a layer and give it some time to dry and then pour more water down to remove it. So this whole thing is basically just a process of building layers and removing them by adding water or just diluting them and moving them to a different space on the canvas. And it creates this really, to me, it creates an amazing kind of shadow effect. It gives a lot of depth to the canvas. And when I first started doing it, I was immediately drawn to not only the general piece of the process of making them, but what would happen after you did it for a while and you got to see the composition come out after building multiple layers. So then I just became really obsessed with layering the ink on the canvas, and this is
So the veiled look and the depth is really wonderful. But it's just, these just don't paint themselves. You don't just throw anything down and it turns out like this. There's a lot of intelligence in exactly how she's moving the paint around, and that's what makes these quite special.
It's a very intentional process, and I tried my best to play with allowing it to be its own thing as well, because water is very difficult to control if you've ever put it on any surface and tried to move it around. So to be intuitive with the process of the water is a totally different element than even just coming up with composition. It's like you come up with what you want it to look like, and then you have the process of having to interact and have this relationship with the medium that you're using. So depending on how it reacts with you, you know, you may have exactly what you had in your mind in the beginning, or you may have something else that forms that tells you about yourself. So in this process, I'm able to create things that are in my mind, but also learn about myself because there's unpredictable things that happen because of the elements. And that's really what drives me to do more and more of these, because I feel like each one of them is a completely different experience and process and feeling when you look at them.
Do you come to it with an idea, like of how you might want it to look like, or do you just stand in front of the blank thing and then you just begin?
It's a little bit of both. Sometimes I just begin with a blank surface and I think of, well, what do I want to do right now? And majority of the time it's more of a feeling. It's more of something that I'm pushed to express, whether it's a combination of feelings or one particular feeling. So some of these have very specific reasons why they exist, and other ones are more about me learning about myself. I got into this phase of wanting to cover everything up with black for multiple reasons. People's kind of aversion to that color, the drama that comes from the color black, especially when it's, you know, paired with other really bright colors. So this process was basically of building a color and then covering it up with black and then revealing the color underneath. And then I added a separate element of, I guess I call them photons. So this piece is called Photon Rose, this piece is called Photon Fall. And to me, I have this, I guess, pull towards cosmic things in the sky and stars and clouds and cloud formations, just because it's so familiar and beautiful and calming, and you can just sit and watch these things for forever, it seems sometimes. And I was trying my best to create that in a in a confined space, and this is what happened.
I like the little photons in there a lot. It's really nice. So let's talk about this one, because I'm very fond of this piece. It's like, it's referential, it almost has a foresty feeling to it.
Yeah.
So it has like magic fairy dust going off in the forest. I don't know what you want to say about it, but I think this is really a great painting.
Thank you. Well, this one's called Lucid, and this was actually the very first ink painting that I ever did. This was the first day that I discovered ink at Walker's office supply store. And I went home and tried to figure out how you use it. I went online, no one was really doing anything with it. I couldn't, you know, find any techniques available, so I had to basically learn how it wanted to be used. So I started with this very expressive process of just standing over the canvas and pouring the ink on top of it, which is very different than the process of these, which is why it came out, you know, way more expressive, a lot more movement in it. The original painting was orange with a teal splash, violet, you know, corner over here, and this pink-red situation. And I really liked it, but there was something about the vibrance of it that was kind of overwhelming. So one day in I don't know, just a mode, I decided to paint it all black. Again, kind of like these. But I wasn't satisfied with that either, because I felt like I was losing a lot of the elements of what I had just created underneath. So I thought about different things that I could use, and I went through my house to look for chemicals, and I played with things like salt and alcohol, and figured out basically this process that I could create where if I layered the paintings, I could remove certain little circles or halos or areas of the painting to reveal the layers underneath. So this was the very first experience of me doing that. So I did all the colors at once, and then I did a layer of black over all of
She
it.
had these basic shapes.
With ink?
Yes.
And then you dissolve the black with alcohol and salt?
Depending on how strong the alcohol is, it creates different effects. If you see the other paintings, some of them will have rings, some of them will have very tiny dots on them. And it depends on the concentration of the alcohol and also the kind of ink that you use. So depending on the brand, depending on what, pigments they make it out of, depending on if it's a dye-based or if it's a waterproof ink, they react totally differently. So that's basically this.
And you do this without brushes? You just pour the ink onto the surface and then
Yeah.
you put other stuff on top?
Yeah, with this one, I used a brush to put the alcohol on it, so if you can see the movement of the lines, I was throwing
Yeah, I
it.
see that.
As
But
opposed to
those are-
these, where I was just kind of dropping it onto the
But
canvas.
this would have been splattered on, right?
Yeah,
It's fun. These are
It's really fun.
Techniques that are often used in watercolor.
I decided that ink was just gonna be my permanent medium, but I wanted to do two pieces, a male and a female, and I wanted to use basically just symmetrical, indigenous kind of designs, and I didn't really have anything other than that in my mind when I went to draw it. So at first I decided that I wanted them to be holding something significant. So for the male, I had him holding the earth as a builder, as a nurturer. As for the female, I had her holding space and the moon. And these symbols, these are Adinkra symbols, they're African, so they have different meanings. I don't want to tell you guys, I want you to look them up. And there's little things that I hid inside the painting that I would rather you guys look at and see if you can find it, and talk to me about it rather than tell you. I don't want to ruin the surprise for you. But yeah, that's basically, I just wanted to create two complementary pieces of masculine and feminine energy, and use ink and gold because, I don't know, I thought they were really beautiful together.
They are.
Is that real gold?
Yes.
So you painted it on?
Is it gold leaf?
right?
Yes, it's gold leaf.
It's really beautiful.
Beautiful on glass.
All right, so is this Buddha or is it what? What is it? What's going on there?
Yes, I would say. I also wanted it to be as neutral as possible. It was kind of like I was slightly referencing Buddha in my mind when I did it, but I was also thinking of youth. I was thinking of just like the peaceful symmetry of like a sweet face. And I wanted it to be very dark because one of the most fascinating things to me about using this medium is that the layering effect that it has and being able to reveal what's underneath. I haven't found any other medium that gives me this. So if you look closely at this, I did a chemical effect initially before I drew the face on top. So the outside looks totally different than what's happening on the inside. There are about 20 to 30 different layers of ink in the face that you can't really see when you're far away, but if you're close up to it, and I'll get out of you guys' way so you can look at it. If you get up close to it, you're able to see it.
I'm going to demonstrate what it is to go up close to it. Wow, it's worth
Go for it.
This one's called kudzu. I was really just thinking about my walk from home to school in Georgia growing up. And basically everything in the South and Georgia's covered in this vine, bunch of leaves on it, it grows over everything. It's very invasive. But it's also really beautiful, and I kind of took for granted how much it had integrated itself into my awareness until I moved away from it. And for some reason, using the color green, the first thing that popped into my mind when I started to create these shapes was that walk from my house to elementary school every day and passing like an entire wall of these trees that were covered. They were overgrown with this vine. So that's what this is about.
Is there one color of green that you work with, and then you blend it in with yellow or some other, or is there several
You've
colors
got
of
several.
green?
There's several
green
different-
I
ink
mean, I'm
colors.
talking about little jars of green you can use.
Are you buying different colors of ink or are you mixing?
Both.
That's what I should have asked.
Both. I buy different colors and I also make my own colors. And I also mix them on the canvas as well. Like I mix them away from the canvas if I want something flat, but certain things like this, If you look at this layer, it's a flat color of green, but it also has a dark blue-green outline. Also intentional. It looks like an accident, but you have to do these things on purpose.
When you do that with your hand, you don't use a brush for that? Just a thin finger?
There's two different qualities of lines. If anyone has noticed, there are these very smooth lines that happen, and then there are these very kind of jagged lines where the ink bleeds into the canvas. And the reason why this happens is during the drying process, because I have to layer these and wait for it to dry. You know, I can't add another layer while another one's drying or they'll blend together. So it takes a while to build these on top of each other. As it's drying, if I continue to run my finger along it, it creates a very smooth line when it dries. If I don't, if I allow it to dry on its own, it has a more organic and volatile way of reacting with the canvas. It does its own thing. So when I first realized this on accident, I realized I didn't want to make paintings that had all of my touch to them. I wanted to allow some of the layers to do what they were going to naturally do without my help. And I liked the way that it was creating this not too beautiful abstract. I didn't want it to be too polished. I didn't want it to look like I did everything on purpose. So yeah.
Less
Good.
defined, more undefined. Some defined and some.
Right. Like life, you know. You can't control everything, but you can do your best.
Well, this kind of painting is a kind of cooperative between you and happy accidents.
Definitely. Happy little accidents.
Let's talk about this one.
This one is actually, I would say, my favorite. Out of all the ones that I've created using this effect, I would say that this one was the most successful. The quality of light that was able to come from the layers underneath is something that I feel like I aim for in most of the ones that I'm using, the chemical reaction. And for whatever reason, the layers, the way that they were built, and the colors also, it gave me the feeling and the effect that I was really hoping for. I feel like it glows. I feel like I'm looking at something, I don't know, what's that term for things that glow? Phosphorescent?
Yeah, it looks phosphorescent.
Yeah. And also learning things, because
Go ahead.
when I initially did this, it was green and pink. So this layer underneath here was magenta. It was a bright pink, but because of the kind of ink that I was using, when I did the chemical reaction, it turned white. So instead of having what I initially thought would happen, something else happened, but it was still what I expected and also better than I expected at the same
Well, I
time.
love the grays with those greens.
Yeah.
And this one gets really spatial if you spend a little time with it.
So what was the chemical reaction? Was it the alcohol again?
This one's alcohol, yes.
Okay, alcohol. What, did you splatter it on, like sprinkle or splatter? Or?
This one I would say was more dropped on.
With your hand, you pick it up in your hands?
I put it in a cap or a little cup, just drop it.
Or drop, like from a cup?
Yep.
It's very good, really.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, let's move on. There's probably not a lot, well, we could say the same thing again, but I think people should just enjoy the different
Yeah.
flavor of each one of these ink paintings. But I do think we have to ask a few questions about this one.
This is something that's evolved over the process of the last 8 years in Fairfield. I have photos of the process. It's very funny how it's changed. As of right now, where it stands, it's exactly that, a self-portrait. It's a being in creation. It's expressing the holiness of emotion, the holiness of the intellect, and the holiness of creation. This being is transparent. This being has given birth. This being has held its heart out for the world to see. This being doesn't see with its own eyes, it sees through the eyes of others. And it feels all of those things. It takes them all in. So it's It's one of those things that's a little bit difficult to,
No, I think
difficult
you
to
said
explain.
enough. Now we can move on if you'd like. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
What about the part on top there? Was that done specifically for this, or is it? separate?
Yeah, I really, I do space art, and when I did this, I realized that it felt like a headpiece to this painting. It just made sense. It made sense to me. So that's why it's there.
And you did that too.
Yeah, I did that. That one's spray paint.
Would you say you're kind of a cosmic being?
I mean, aren't we all?
So you're saying like a year or two from now, I could come see this and it's gonna be different?
It'll be different. Yeah.
Are you still working on
Right.
But then I would expect it would still be.
And I'll sneak into your house and paint it every once in a while. It's time for more. It's
not done yet.
I've grown.
And the eyes outside the body is, as you say, it's seen through the eyes of others? Would that be like people like us in the room, or is it some other kind of concept that you were thinking of?
Everyone. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like every person that I meet, I try to understand them. I try to understand where they're coming from. And in that process of understanding them, I feel like I understand myself better. And it's, in a way, almost the same as painting. When you meet someone, when you talk to them, when you learn the things that they love, the things that they struggle with, to me, that's all the same thing that I'm experiencing when I'm painting and I'm learning about myself. It's a conversation that I'm having with myself.
Trina, tell us more about the background. It's really fascinating to me, you know, the upper right
Yeah, the filigree up there, beautiful.
and the designs
thank you.
around
Captivated by
the
it.
shoulder. Tell us more about that.
I wanted the background to show, I guess, my state of mind at the time, which was not very simple. I couldn't really like express that in a solid shape or something like that. So when I first started, it was a bunch of white. It was a bunch of white figures. It almost looked like a language, almost like letters. And they're the ones that are pink now. And that's because at the end of it, I had this feeling of, I don't know, just washing everything, washing it all in this color because of how it felt. So again, it's like it's one of those things that's really hard to explain. But initially, it was almost like a language that I felt like I was writing on the canvas, even though it wasn't a real language and they weren't words. I felt like I was saying something, just in kind of like a hieroglyphic shape sort of way. I didn't think anyone would notice and ask a question about it like you did. But yeah, that's really what it was. I felt like I was talking about something and expressing something on the canvas, but without making myself as vulnerable as speaking English, so that someone could read it.
But I love the complexity of form, the shapes in there.
Thank you.
And you said you were giving birth? Did you say you were giving birth? Is that little golden egg over there? Is that what
Yeah.
you gave birth to? Yeah.
Yeah.
And your crown too, gold.
Yeah, there's little domes in there for Fairfield.
Where are the little domes?
In the crown shop.
Oh, is that a dome? Is that gold? Also,
It's gold, yeah.
That's gold.
And it's really fun too, because if you start from here and walk, it changes it.
Yeah,
At a certain point in your stride, the gold illuminates. So the middle of the heart and the head and everything, they just shine all of a sudden when you get about here. Next to this guy.
It gives me a good
Lush.
fulfilling experience in
Yeah.
there.
Completely lush.
Love the teal.
But all the layering and stuff going on inside there, and all the light emanating. It's like a living planet or something.
Thank you.
Tropical gardens.
Yeah, the light thing is really important to me. I never thought that I would do abstract paintings at all.
It's a good thing you did.
Initially, I felt like, I wouldn't say that they were easy, but I just felt like they took less thought than, I don't know, drawing a person or whatever. So I didn't have the appreciation for them that I do now. And it wasn't until I did backgrounds intended backgrounds for other paintings and couldn't touch them anymore, that I realized that I was an abstract painter. I kind of had to struggle with that for a while. So it's like, no, all together. So there's 4 24 by 24s, and these were the results of just listening to 3 musicians. One of them was a local drummer, one of them was Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley. And this was kind of a combination. I was just listening to a playlist at the time. So this one's called Measure. They're all about music, keeping time. When I was at a certain point in this one, listening to Bob Marley's music, Buffalo Soldier started playing. So I actually started writing the lyrics to Buffalo Soldier in the canvas. So it's part of it. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about these. That one's Jimmy. Fourth one over there, that one, kind of purple haze but longer than it. This one, the hearts. This was a piece that I did for my best friend. It was shortly after my mom passed away 2 years ago. I was just having a lot of, I guess, thoughts about how humans are connected to each other, and hugs. I like hugs a lot. I'm like a really big hug person. And so I think about, like your hearts touching when you hug, and what that looks like, and the kind of shapes that it makes when people are hugging different ways, just, I don't know, I'm just really fascinated by that. So for whatever reason, I was thinking about my best friend, and I had the image of the both of our hearts kind of tied together in this way. And I put it on the canvas, and this is what happened. I absolutely adore this person. I have known him for half my life. I wanted to create something that would express to him how I felt about our friendship, because I'm not that good with words sometimes when it comes to this sort of thing. Yeah, I think it's really just about relationships to me. It's about connecting to people and really having like a genuine adoration for another human being and their journey.
This is like almost one piece.
Almost.
Which I mean, but this is, well, you have to tell us that. But those two as a pair would also be a very nice experience. You could talk about this whole setup and
Okay.
how it came about.
Yeah.
I mean, were they created intentionally?
Yeah, these are intentional. Well, not to be together, just intentionally on their own. This one was the first one out of these to be created, and it has a different process. If you look at the two of these, one of the biggest differences is that this one has blended layers of color, where the colors have been muted and mixed together. This one is only solid layers. So there's a very different effect that happens, because on this one I would build a layer and then I would remove it almost the same way as the black ones in the front. And then I would do another layer on top of it and I would remove it. Whereas this one I would just do a layer, let it dry, do a layer, let it dry, do a layer, let it dry. But I wanted to use the same colors to see just how much of a difference it would make to have two different, processes. And visually, from afar, they go together very well. They almost look the same in a way. But to me, there are very, very big differences. I feel like this painting is very, very strong, very hard, has very concrete edges and shapes. Whereas like this one to me feels like, instead of veil, this one's actually called veil. Instead of all these layers of veils in front of you, it's almost like a three-dimensional world that you can go into.
No, this is much more dimensional. I think that is an amazing painting.
This is
And I would like to actually see it just on its own sometime, because that's a very neat painting. And I like the modulations that give it a lumpier, more dimensional feeling.
It feels
And I
like
do
a
love the veils, but that one is very special.
It's very soft. It feels like you can sink into it like a
Yeah,
rose
no,
petal.
it
It's soft.
makes me have really good feelings.
Yeah.
The lotus. The lotus was created my first time falling in love in Fairfield, Iowa. Initially, the background was bright green. It looked very similar to the hearts. for similar reasons. I was very, what's the word? Really cared about the relationship I had with the people that these paintings represented. So in the beginning, this looked a little different. It was actually off balance. It wasn't very even, and I didn't like it. I didn't personally like it. I struggled with it for a while. I struggled with how loud the green in the background was. But a lot of people really liked the vibrance of it. So after a few years, I decided that I was going to do something about it because I was either going to change it or throw it away because I didn't like how it made me feel. So I did, my typical, well, how do I fix this? Paint it black. Just paint the whole thing black.
Oh, that's why.
So that's what I did. I taped the flower off. I painted the whole thing black. And in that process of painting it black, I was also able to go back in and rebalance the entire thing. So there was this feeling of almost being able to fix this relationship that was in the same way very beautiful but very unbalanced. So I felt like it was a therapy in a way that I was working out with myself about this relationship because I was able to fix it visually for myself. And in the end, I ended up falling in love with it and learning so much more about myself, that relationship, and then just also, I guess, the process of colors, just how we feel about colors.
And deciding to put the three together like that, was that just something that happened? You were trying things out and you said, oh, I like that, or did you?
It was more the colors.
Oh.
It was just the green and the red being complementary colors, and then just having the brightness of these feel like, a sunset or a sunrise. To me, it felt like they enlivened each other. And when I put them next to each other, it felt more powerful than them not being, or than being next to other ones, so.
Well, it's a pretty serious contrast.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's power, there's a power in the contrast. Which is good, I like it.
Yeah, and it's really detailed. This one, I like it because it's an impossible lotus. If you look at it up close, the petals make absolutely no sense. There's no flower that could be shaped like that. It literally doesn't even make any sense. And I love that, I absolutely love that. Also, these petals underneath our tongues, most people don't notice that. And it's drooling. Yeah. Colorless sap.
Well, everyone should come and peek around at these,
So
when
there's
at
two
their
little
convenience.
hidden ones over here. These basically were just the result of coming to Fairfield and, being involved and exposed to different cultures and really appreciating the different depictions of deities and wanting to do my own interpretations of them and kind of bring them to life. So I decided to do Ganesh because I think he's adorable and I really love what he represents. I wanted him to be dancing. I wanted him to be on top of a lotus. I wanted him to have floating photons around him. I wanted it to have this very dreamy feel to it. And I wanted to enhance it with gold. So this is what happened. And underneath him, I have a Kali. And I wanted to paint her more like the older versions that I saw, where she's just all black. And I wanted her to look like the universe. I wanted her to be like space. So inside of the black, I put little stars. And then I adorned her with all of these gold decorations. And everything is raised from the canvas. I painted these with, I guess, little applicator bottles so that the paint would be thicker. So her necklace of skulls is raised. She has her nipple pierced. That's actually a real little ring in her nipple. And what else is there? Yeah, just lots of little details and accents. I really just wanted to give her a lot of attention, give her a lot of love and decorations.
So this one wasn't just by hand, it wasn't just putting the paint on and moving your hand on it, no. It was using the bottles?
Huh?
Bottles?
Yeah, bottles of
And
paint.
brushes, no brushes?
And brushes,
And
yeah.
brushes.
Yeah, I used brushes before I realized that I didn't want to anymore. The ink just didn't seem like the right thing to do. For whatever reason, as soon as I saw what I was working with, the first thing I thought to use was my hands. And it ended up being like the best thing to do. I don't even know how I could create something like this with a paintbrush. Like that seems.
Yeah, but these, you did use brushes before you used your hands. I mean,
I did.
these are skilled, these are highly skilled
Yep.
brushes, you know, and you know what I mean? It's not like you couldn't paint, so you had to do your hands.
Right.
you know.
Yeah. This one's called Photon Sow, and it's about planting seeds. It seems kind of corny, but that's what I was thinking of.
That's a
And the yellow represents sunlight. I wanted it to have that feel coming from here. The green represents the earth, and the blue represents water. And it has a partner as well called Photon Reap. It's about planting seeds. But all of the paintings in the Photon series have these little dots on them, so that's the thing that kind of ties them all together. Just like the idea of bands and particles of light. And there are about 5 or 6 different colors, the small dots that are on here. The closer that you get, the more you can see there's little red dots and orange dots and blue dots and yellow dots. From far away, you can't see it at all. But the closer you get, the more and more colors you're able to see. So we've already talked about Jimmy. This one's called Vortex. With this one, I played around with, I think, maybe 4 or 5 of the more abstract India ink pieces. And I wanted to challenge myself to see if I could control the water. I wanted to see if I could control the path of it and how well I could control it. So I tried to think of a shape. And the first shape I thought of was a circle. And to make it more complicated for myself, I decided to make the circle a ring. So it was a really fun process. And this is about 60 different layers of blue ink rings on top of each other. And the colors are made everywhere from like a really dark cobalt to a green, and I mixed them and just did different gradations to create the depth. But the same process, I lay the water down, put the ink in it, and then have to tip the canvas
so you make
around.
a circle of water.
Yeah.
And drop the ink in.
But this one was the hardest because of that. In order to, to keep the water in the ring as you're moving this canvas around is really, really difficult. But I love the way that it turned out. I'm very happy with it. Next to that, we have the famous Hungry Hungry Hippo. Everyone seems to love. And I always hear the same thing about him being like a gatekeeper, or him being like I don't know, it's some weird dimension to some other world. But I've heard it so many times now that that's what he is. I'm just going to accept that. He's a gatekeeper to another dimension, gently smiling and waiting for you to ask for entry.
I love that.
Thank you.
To me, it's just so representative of the conflict between nature and the universe and all the changes that are going on in the universe. And there's this really solid being that's just planted there. I just love it.
A Gothic spirit guide.
Totally.
Yeah, there's something very lighthearted about his smile, just like, I don't usually like Ganesh, but yours I like because he was so lighthearted. He's on an angle and he's sort of cartoony and, it's a lighthearted. Thank you.
And then next to him, we have Amethyst. Amethyst is my birthstone. I just really appreciate the healing qualities that the stone has, and also just the hue of purple. We already mentioned this one, but I'll say a few more things because I really like, this one's very different than the rest of them. If you look at the chemical process, this one created halos, but it also created these clusters of halos, which was very different than what's happened in a lot of the other ones. This one has multiple layers of interference ink on it as well, or interference paint. So if you're walking past this, it changes from blue to gold. And then there's also a layer of black drawings underneath that you see as you're passing by. So if you're standing here, it looks blue. About here, it starts to turn gold. And then about here, it turns back blue, and you can start to see the black drawings underneath become revealed.
kind of missed this one. I've been here a couple of times, I missed it.
Yeah,
I'm looking now and I'm going,
It's been helpful to have somebody to lead you in.
this is like,
I have a lot of questions about that one. I mean, I'm assuming you used alcohol again in the process, but how many layers are kind of on top of the drawing?
This would be about 4.
I love the way the yellow light comes through on top. It looks like gold and it makes it very warm. It's like it's glowing, it's burnished.
Yeah, burnished.
It's gorgeous.
Interference paints are, they're very holographic. The hippo is also painted with this, so if you walk past the hippo, there's parts of him that turn from white to purple, depending on where you're standing. Like a very shiny, iridescent purple. This piece is called a ruck. This is also a pretty recent piece. I decided to do something different. I was still using the same reference for layering, but I wanted to use more ink than I'd used before. I wanted it to be thicker and more opaque. I wanted to see what would happen if I didn't dilute it as much as I was used to doing. And it came out with this beautiful, shiny, almost oil paint quality to it. The shapes that were created for whatever reason. I was thinking about a volcanic eruption at the time. The piece is called a rook. And yeah, I guess the main thing about it, I was trying to bring out a really, really rich red by pairing it with something really, really dark. And I chose purple just because I feel like purple is one of the most passionate dark colors that you can use.
It's amazing how you got the feeling of flames right in here, of heat right in here. I don't know how you did that, but it's cool.
Yeah, this one surprised me. I was not expecting what happened when I did it. But again, this is what drives me to do what I do and to do it as much as I can, because when you don't have these things in your mind ahead of time and then you do it, it feels so good. It feels so good.
Because the black feels really deep and soft, and then the red really comes out with bright, and you feel like you can touch it, you know.
Yeah, I always wonder if the feelings that I'm having when I create the work are actually being, you know, I don't know, in some way painted into the canvas as I'm painting it. You never really know how people feel when they look at it, and I try my best not to, I guess, adulterate anyone's process or what they're feeling by giving them my opinion of it or what I was thinking or whatever, because, I don't know, to me, art isn't necessarily just about the person who created it, you know, it's all about the transfer of energy, of darshan, of whatever is gonna come through that piece. But yeah, just to have that, I don't know, that urge to just keep doing that, that's I can't get enough of it, that's just.
It's very dimensional,
Yeah.
that piece.
Yeah.
It's so magical, you feel like you can go into that crevice
Right.
and see what's going on there.
It looks very soft.
Yeah.
It's just,
You made that one while the show was being on, didn't you?
I did. I was really emotional when I did that piece.
You really what?
Really emotional.
When you did this one?
Yeah,
Well-
just the stress from the show and the excitement and getting everything done and freaking out, you know, all at the same time. That's what happened. You know, apparently all of those feelings came together to make that. I should call that my first show.
It's like very present. Wait, which one you talking about? This one?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like there's something alive there.
Yeah, it's very
alive. You know, it's alive.
These are the last two. They were the last ones that I made for the show. The color choices were really about, to me, I was trying to use, I guess, more flesh tones or like human colors, but also, I don't know, more vibrant, flowery or sun or fire, you know, just to kind of blend all of these different things together and try to find a medium so that when someone looked at it, they just experienced all of those things. That's really what I was trying to do. For this one, when I painted it, I ended up feeling more of a flower quality, the soft petal, exotic fruit, those little fuzzy yellow things that come out of the insides of really pretty exotic flowers. That's what was going on with this one. And trying to leave room for the light to shine through in both of them was really, the main intention, was to put as much vibrant color on it and to conjure up all of these feelings of, humanity and skin and flowers and fire and all of these tangible things, and then also have it be a really vague, just experience of light and color.
I love this one. This is amazing.
I wanted them to be as different as possible. So I went in with, I guess, only a couple of intentions. This one I wanted to keep as simple as possible and use the least amount of layers to communicate what I wanted to. And that was really difficult. For me, that was my first time challenging myself to limit how many layers I was putting on the canvas, whereas all of the other ones are kind of built on using as many layers as possible. So to have a partner for this, I felt like I needed something a bit more expressive and chaotic and vibrant and just fiery. So I created this one with the feeling that I was thinking about being inside. I was thinking about being inside of a cave and looking out at a sunset. I don't know why. But just having like a bunch of veils or things that seem like they're in front of you, but you still have this very clear view of the sun, of the light that's coming in. I wanted it to be really obvious, like the shapes of conflict, and I wanted it to have a very opposite feeling from the outside to the inside of the canvas. Kind of in the same way that this is, but doing something different to achieve it. I do Instagram though, however, so if you guys have Instagram, please snap photos, hashtag Tree of Na, hashtag Dextrina. That would be really helpful and awesome to me in my heart.
Well, thank you. This was really nice.
Thank you guys for coming.
It's across the board, obviously.
She's like a powerhouse when she creates, so I was wondering
But she
what.
was seriously into it, so I just had to left her alone.
When you
But I
see her, and
enjoyed
sometimes
watching
it's
that.
like, oh, hi.
No, we didn't do too much
No,
talking.
no, she's like.
I don't do a lot of gossip. I don't just
No.
shoot the bull a lot because I'm a pretty busy guy. Anyway.
I know that about you.